Welcome to Psychic Evolution with evidential psychic medium Jamie Clark and spiritual coach and healer Maggie Clark.
And welcome back to another episode of Psychic Evolution. I'm Jamie Clark.
And I'm Maggie Clark, and this is the podcast where you discover the psychic potential within to empower yourself and manifest your psychic and mediumship gifts.
And these abilities are so natural. They're supernatural.
And today we want to thank all of our listeners for giving us some feedback on upcoming podcast episodes. It really has triggered this particular episode on animal communication. And so we want to dedicate this podcast to Alicia A. She is a fan and a friend of this podcast. And thank you, Alicia. We are on your team and we will definitely help you develop your gifts so that you can communicate with animals. And today we want to introduce a beautiful, wonderful, wonderful psychic medium who is also an animal communicator. And we thought having the two combined would be the best thing for this show because most people want to do both. And so we want to welcome you, Susan Allen. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, guys. How are you? It's so lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. What was your first memory of having communication with animals?
The first real thing that I remember was odd is I was in somebody's backyard and I remember seeing a monarch butterfly, in the distance, and I started communicating with it. And I was telling it to please come land on my hands. And it was like this vast backyard. It was a huge backyard. And he flew over and he landed on my hands. I don't know if it was a he or she, but I remember bringing the hands up to my eyes and not blinking and having this whole communication with it. And its wings very gently opened and closed. It felt like the longest communication I had ever had. And then I remember having a thought, and it was very fast and quick. I was blown away. It was before we had cell phone cameras, so I couldn't grab a phone. I couldn't tape it. He was fearless. I was fearless. I could look at every inch of that little butterfly on my hand. That's how close I was to his. My eyes met his. If they have eyes, I would say eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And the minute I had the thought, oh my God, my arm is really hurting from holding my hands up. The minute the thought came in my head, the butterfly left.
Yeah.
And that's what made me realize that it's in a flash. It's all in a flash. And then years later, a friend of mine said, come up to the ranch and just love on Leo because I couldn't ride. I needed a hip replacement and I was like the youngest person ever to need new hips, new everything.
Wow, you're number one.
Yeah, the doctor's like, no, you can't do it. You're too young. Well, I was like
Wow.
an athlete my whole life. And I guess I just broke down my joints. I don't know. So I just was still not in tune with my real mission and my real field. I started going to the ranch to just love on this horse because I couldn't ride. And every week I'd give him a massage, 5 pounds of carrots. Probably not a good thing to give one horse 5 pounds of carrots, but I did. And it would take me like an hour. And then finally at the end of the hour, he'd drop his head, let me kiss his face, and then I'd leave. He was this ginormous horse and would not bend his head until I was done. Massage, all of this. And I remember going there. I thought I was losing my mind and I would just cry and cry and cry. And I thought, they have cameras on me. They're not going to let me come here anymore because he was communicating with me his past and how he missed Germany and he left his friends. And then he was saying, I really don't want to do this anymore. My legs hurt. And I said, well, tell me how to help you. And he told me to go to his hindquarters, put my hands on his back legs. That's where the pain was. And I felt his back legs and it was really hot. I felt energy leave my hands. And And then he said that he felt better. And I was like, what is going on? I thought, this is really crazy. But I just went with it. And I just kept doing this with him. He kept downloading and teaching me how to heal him, animals. I guess this was like my future development with the animal world. And then I was getting the surgery. I couldn't stand on my leg anymore. It was ridiculous. And I went up and I said, look, I said, I can't stand on this leg. I said, you're going to have to put your head down quicker because I'm not going to see you for 6 weeks. And this is all telepathic. You know, nobody sees me talking to the horse. This is all like I'm having a full blown conversation, like I'm having with you guys. And all of a sudden, I kid you not, in a flash, just like the butterfly, I had the thought, I said the words, his head came down, his eyes closed, and his ears came forward. And I went, holy shit. So I still wasn't kind of there. I still wasn't. And so I'm healing from my surgery, and I'm in this high pressured real estate thing that I was doing. And it was really stressful. And the people that were helping me said, you know, we want to go back to our own real estate deals. You better find somebody else. And I'm thinking, wait, I can't, wait, what? I can't even drive. So I was stressed. And my beloved brother, I called him and I said, I can't, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Susie, you better like take some dumb class that you're just interested in online. So I had this beloved French bulldog, and she was really young, and I was crazy about her. And I waited so long to get her. And it was like a 2 year in the planning mode that I was going to get this dog and it would look like this. And most women look at Jimmy Choos at night at 11 o'clock. I was looking at Frenchies and everything you needed to know about French bulldogs. So that my husband's like, what are you doing? I'm looking at Frenchies. Like this went on for 2 years. So I thought, I just love this dog. And that morning, with my ice machine on my hip, and I'm sitting there and in pain, and the class came into my email, and it was Animal Communication 101. Join the class. And I joined, and the teacher sent out, and I teach just like this. This is like the best way that I know to teach, and it's still how I do my work. She sent out a photo of the animal. She said, okay, go into meditation. Let's do this little meditation. Let go of everything and just open your eyes, look at the picture, and see what you get and write it down. So I write down, and it was like a Disney Technicolor movie. I was like, what? Wait, I don't write like this. I'm not a writer. And it was 3 pages of, I had a nose problem. And in mid sentence, the horse said it was a nostril problem. And it really scared me. And the ravens talk to me when they sit on my water bucket and they tell me where they've been. And it's also interesting to me. And then when we went around, there were 10 people. I was on my iPad going around, and everybody's giving her what they wrote. And some people were, you know, very simple. And mine was like this long, like, I'm like, I don't even like to write. Why is this happening? And I read to her, and what had happened to her horse was she was on a retreat, and she boarded the horse, and he went in his water bucket, and there was a wire in there, and he came out, and the wire got stuck in one nostril. So he switched and got specific, and he pulled back, and he almost bled to death. They found him laying on his stall, and it was very, very dramatic. He needed a blood transfusion. Anyway, everybody in the class started calling me for readings. This is the first class I ever did. And one of the people was a veterinarian. And she kind of started my business. I didn't feel like this would be a career. I didn't feel I needed it. I didn't want to study. I just wanted to do these readings. So I basically did readings for free. And then my phone was blowing up. And then this healer friend of mine, I told, I said, you know, I think I'm healing animals and I'm talking to animals and I'm getting evidence. And she looked at me and she goes, yeah, you're an animal communicator. And I went, I am? And I still wasn't believing this.
Good that
And
you're
so,
questioning things.
yeah. And then I would sit for half an hour and meditate, 20 minutes I'd meditate. Then I'd bring out my composition notebook. I'd open up a picture of the pet. I journal for 20 to 30 minutes, and then I'd be on the phone for an hour. The main thing was I wanted people and their animals to heal. I wanted to be specific as possible. And I just was like majorly hard on myself, like my students are. Oh, I don't think I'm getting it right. I'm just not sure. And it's like we are so hard on ourselves as communicators. I think because most of us are highly, highly sensitive, probably mostly from trauma and growing up in a traumatic environment and being highly sensitive coming in. I remember I told my husband, I have an animal reading tonight. And he goes, you're going to do great. And I said, if they want their money back, that's the worst they can ask me. Is like if I suck, I could give them their money back. And
Absolutely.
that's kind of how I started my business. I just wanted to do my work, be happy, and work with animals. And that was really the key. But I always wanted to work with animals. Like most people, when you're little, you want to be a trainer at SeaWorld. And I remember I saw the whales at SeaWorld and I ran to my mother and I said, I have to do this. And she went, Susie, you're not really good in science and you're not really good in math. So I don't really think you can do this. And I was like 8 years old and I was like, yeah, you're right. I probably can't do that. And then when I got older, I said, I think I really want to be a vet tech. And then I thought, no, I can't deal with blood and guts and animals injured. And that's just not going to be a good way for me either. I love the animal communication work so much that I feel like I was born to do this. That's kind of like the evolution of it.
Are you ready to channel them and write a book?
Well, I probably have a book of all my readings because I have like 3 to 4 composition books filled when I journal my readings, and that's one book. Then there's my memoir that I'm working on now that I'm getting
Cool.
some help with to finish it because I've been writing it for years and years. And then
No.
the third book is How My Dog Rosie, that is in spirit. I can't even write about her yet. She still works with me and she's deceased 2 years, September 23rd. And I still can't write the story because when she incarnated is when she showed me who I was. And
Beautiful.
she was my teacher. So
Beautiful.
yeah, so 14 years ago, she came in and that was the year I started animal communication because I loved her so much and who knew?
And do you find that most of your students and most people that do animal communication work with animal guides on the other side or their higher self, master guide? What do you usually see in the spectrum of the guides that work with you?
I love that question of guides. What I feel, my dog since she crossed over has been a serious guide for me. But the only way that I really was able to start connecting was through started a meditation practice and being an anxious person, it was like the hardest thing for me to ever do. But I stayed committed to it for my anxiety.
Good.
And because of my anxiety and not wanting to use meds, I'm not saying people that need meds to get off of them. That is not what I'm here saying. What I'm saying is my choice not to ever use anxiety medicine unless I was like really in bad shape, like when I'm on a plane and you need to
Yeah.
take something.
It worked.
So getting back to the spirit guides of what you asked, it's very interesting. Like for me, it's the collective of love because love is what heals. Love is my connection to my clients, my animals. And occasionally I see my dad when I'm connecting, or I could totally feel him come in. And he helps me when I connected with the dead people started coming. But just out of my anxiety, I didn't want dead people in my house. I didn't want to be near dead people. I didn't want to work with dead people. I was kind of, no, 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 no. Well, one day I was doing a reading and I was sitting, and across the room is a picture of me and my dad. I think he was deceased at the time. And the picture of my dad started morphing while I was on a phone reading with a client with her cat. And she always called me a lot. And all of a sudden, my photo of my dad started changing and it looked like somebody else. And I was describing this man, and she said, that's my dad. And that's how they came in, gentle. So what I didn't know is like people would say, like, I never believed them because I don't believe in anything. I'm like the biggest skeptic.
Good.
People would
I always
say,
say, be skeptical, question everything, just be
I
open.
do, I do, I do, I do. And it's funny, like we're having this conversation, right? And like a dog, I'm showing my belly to you. I'm upside down, vulnerable. This feels like sane to me. Like if I had this conversation with people that aren't spiritual, they'd go, "Oh, she's whacked out. She's schizophrenic. There's something wrong with her."
Uh-huh.
But this is like feels like the most natural thing for me to ever do in my life. And
And it should because it all of our abilities are supernatural. I mean, that's what they're supposed to be.
they really are. And it's when you relax into it. And when I started to really meditate, and then spirit knew I couldn't deal with dead people walking in my life in my room, they started to come in a way that was productive and beautiful with evidence. And they'd show a movie in my head and I'd get personality. And sometimes I even have a full blown conversation with dead people.
Notice how they come in with comfort, not gonna freak you out. Like,
Right.
"Hey, here you
You're
go,"
not
right? You're getting
dangerous.
used to it. Well, yeah. Here's a dynamic, though, but brings up an interesting question is, have you ever done any soul tracing for animals, past life regression, whatever you wanna call it?
You know what's I love your verbiage. It's very sophisticated. When you say soul tracing, animals will tell me if they had a past life with the person in the reading. If that's
Right.
an important aspect in who they were sometimes in the past life and why they came back in. I had one reading. I like to refer to this. This is what happened. The woman's German Shepherd was dying and it was young. And I was like, I couldn't fathom what I couldn't. He was blocking me. I couldn't figure out. I referred her to a homeopathic vet that I was using in Florida for a lot of my clients. He couldn't figure it out, but he was telling her to give the dog this and that, and she was just a wreck. And the dog was dying. So they finally opened the dog up to see what was going on. It was cancer. It was really young, just like young children that come in with cancer. It was like a karmic thing. And this is one of the people that said, I'm not using PayPal. I got to send you a check. And I went, okay, whatever, send me a check. It was like 10 years ago. And I never cashed the woman's check because I didn't have closure with this dog. And she called me and she said, I put the dog to sleep. It was cancer. And I said, okay, I'm returning your check. And she said, no, no, no. Do you talk to dead dogs? And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like it's a soul is a soul. And I said, okay, just give me a week. Let me decompress from this sadness because I would always get so sad. I was so sensitive in the beginning. And I'll call you in a week and we'll do a reading. And I go into meditation with like, thank God that's over and the dog is out of pain and suffering. And I go into meditation. And what do you think? The dog is in my third eye. So I grab my book and my pen and I read to her what I wrote. I called her and it was all about this was so freaky. The dog said, I missed my mom. I didn't get to say goodbye. They told me it would be a short time that I would be there. I didn't realize it would be so horrible for her. Tell her I love her and tell her to take a picture in the backyard and I will appear. And she was an orb photographer. So she was into all this woo woo stuff more than even I was. So I told her everything she said. And she said, I took the picture last night. Let me send it to you. And by the way, what you don't know about me is my son died and I never got to say goodbye. He flew to my cousin's. There was a bad drug interaction. He had H1N1 and he passed away. And he had just become a lawyer and she was very proud. She's a great lady. And the dog the dog was using a German Shepherd body to come back to this woman who was a German Shepherd collector. She had 4 German Shepherds. He knew that she loved German Shepherds so much, he manifested himself with the help of spirit into a German Shepherd body.
That's beautiful. I'm gonna cry.
It was pretty tremendous. And then she sent me the photo of the orb she took. And it looked like it was hand painted. It looked like a white German Shepherd laughing in an orb. Like it was crystal clear. And I sent it to several friends and family, and I'm going, what do you say? Oh, it's a white German Shepherd, and it's beautiful. Like, how is that? I was like, what? Wait, what? And then, like, you know how spirit teaches through the work. I had a girlfriend I'd walk with, and she wanted an animal reading, and she was from Thailand and Buddhist. And I was telling her about this incident, and she said, Buddhists believe that a dog will pass, a person will pass through a dog at least once in its incarnation. So then I was like, wow, there you go.
The really interesting thing about this story, just as a complete side note, is today on our Psychic Evolution Instagram, I was like, oh, I want to get ready for this podcast recording. And so let me post something about connecting to our loved ones on the other side, but I want to feature an animal. And so I pulled up this picture and I was like, oh, a white German Shepherd. This is perfect. And
Wow.
it's actually a white wolf, but in my mind, I was like, oh, a white German Shepherd. And so I was like, oh, that's the one that I'll use. And so that
What a
was
coincidence.
perfect timing.
Huh.
Just so you know, this is the first time we have allowed our dog. His name is Simba Love, and he is our cosmic canine. This is the first episode we actually allow him in the studio with us. So he is sleeping.
And he's such a beautiful dog and an excellent communicator. We're now creating a book, Simba, the Cosmic Canine. So from the planet, the unconditional love, the empowerment, just being you, the complete acceptance for who you are. They come through to other worlds to help us realize that unconditionalness. Just be
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
And Simba was a rescue. In preparation, of course, another preparation for this episode, I was having a dream last night. And in my dream, my parents' dog, who had recently passed, came up in a visitation, like a visitation dream with
Wow.
Simba, hanging out with Simba, running around together. And Simba's around people, which usually doesn't happen in his normal life because of his behavioral projects. But it was just so healing to see Simba get to run around with people and dogs, and this dog coming just to pay a visit, and the synchronicity of how we connect with our animals. And I just really want our listeners to know that when you put out the calling card that you're open to connect, to open to try animal communication and to really make those connections, just to allow them to unfold however they're going to, because even just getting ready for a podcast episode, I had a dream visit. I picked this white German Shepherd for a post. I mean, all the synchronicities, they all line up. And when you tune into those channels, they
Beautiful.
open and they expand for everyone.
I can't believe that you're saying this because last night I never can remember a lot of my dreams unless it's a visitation. And last night I felt like it was symbolic and it was all dogs. And here we are today. I mean, now that you brought up your dream, I might as well tell you about my dream. I'm rushing out of a parking structure and I'm going really fast on a curve. And I almost hit literally a bunch of dogs that all have tags on and they're all hanging out together. And symbolically, I felt they were all rescues. And I see a Frenchie, but it's a very unusual, it's orange and white. Frenchies aren't orange and white. And it's really furry. And I wanted it to come over to me and it didn't. But a Yorkie came over to me and I picked it up and I felt like maybe Rosie's coming back as a Yorkie. And that was my dream. And why I feel it's a Yorkie, I'll just tell you, when my mother passed away in my 20s, I remember the last conversation, she was lucid for 5 minutes, but I don't think she was here. So I'm in my 20s and I said to her, I'm going to miss you so much. And she opened up her eyes. She never spoke like this. She was a difficult woman, but I loved her and cherished her. She opened up her eyes and she said, honey, just get a little Yorkie and give it coffee in the morning and talk to it. I think that's part of my book. I think she was having a premonition of what I would be doing professionally decades later.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe she'll come back as a Yorkie.
Ha
Please
ha
no.
ha.
I want Rosie back as Yorkie, not as my mother.
Well, it might be a different version of your mother.
You're so cute. Oh my God.
The expanded soul love version of your mother.
Yeah.
It would be very
That.
healing. It would be very healing. Beautiful.
It's very healing being around you, Maggie. You're just a love.
Isn't she?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Call her
you.
Saint Maggie. She puts up with me. She's a saint.
My
Lordy.
husband calls me a saint too. That's funny.
Mhm.
Just have to be you.
And I tell everyone, it's true.
Mhm. I always give her credit. Heck yeah, man.
I love it. I love it. Isn't it interesting how our hearts get cracked open Like we can lose somebody significant in our life, and then we get this animal, right? And then the animal crosses over, and it's like worse than you losing the human. Sometimes it's like a recapitulation of another grief and loss and a level that, people will say, well, why does that happen? Why? I don't have the answer, but I can tell you that with every loss, it will make you stronger. Because if you think that I would ever be talking about this publicly, the death of my dog 2 years ago made me catapult into doing Facebook Lives and in the public realm and getting out there as a not having that side job. I always did readings, but I did it under a different name. I was afraid to let go of the field that I was in for 21 years.
Right.
So I didn't want to let go. I thought, funny thing is, when I did let go, spirit totally takes care of me because I don't have nothing to worry about anymore. It's
Exactly, and the way you can approach that, you'll receive it. And that
exactly.
dynamic, yeah, is beautiful because you're just doing you, but you can bridge that connection. You can bring the healing. Has there ever been times where you're doing animal communication and loved one humans connected to the animal start coming through?
Yes. Or even if they didn't meet the animal, they are on spirit side taking care of the animal. And they will tell me, this is who I am, or I'll describe the person. You'll probably really relate to this, Jamie. I was, as a medium, I was in the car after my dog passed away, and I was just like looking out the window, and my husband was driving, and I wasn't even thinking about anything. And all of a sudden, my sister appears holding my dog. And my dog was like, not quite sure. I could tell. And she had these facial expressions that I knew. And
Right.
she was like, I see you, mom, but why am I here being held by this woman? And I swear I was like, oh my God. Because my sister and I did not have a great relationship while she was here. But
Oh,
then I realized, and I was pissed. I missed my dog. She was my child. And then I realized, like, the greatest love somebody could do for you on the other side, even if they were a total asshole to you here, is to take care of your loved ones, your babies, your dogs, your cats.
now, as a medium, and again, everyone can do it, but do you want to? I've always questioned the fact that I do bring through animals and little babies who didn't necessarily make it here that didn't get the
Yeah.
vibe. Yeah. Well, they didn't speak English like adults. However, when they're coming through mediumship, they're talking to me clearly like adults in English. I mean, with
Yes.
complete focus. Well, and I asked my master guide, Chi, I'm like, Chi, how is it possible that that can happen when they haven't been connected in that way? He's like, well, it's kind of like this, Jamie. Before you come into this light, you're an adult soul, you're the oversoul. And you're going to look at this place and go, you know what? That looks like a fun place to enjoy. And how they do it on that planet is you need a vehicle to get around, whether a human, animal, or an insect. It is only a vehicle to house your soul print of consciousness, that eternal beingness. And so I'm like, that makes more sense. And you kind of brought that up to go, hey, we've all had, yeah, huh. And now we see that potentially shapeshifting is very real, just a molecular structure change.
Wow, my God. That's like interesting. Yeah, I love it. Just love
Cool.
it.
And that's, I've got an insatiable hunger because the more I know, I don't know nothing, man.
I know,
But
isn't
if we
that
can learn,
great?
yeah, and share that perspective, not better or worse, but different, they get a different vantage point. And it's like, you know what? I've heard that crap 1,000 times, but click, that's the first time I see it that way. I'm going to try it. I'm like, please do. Let me know how it goes. And the great thing is they empower themselves. We're just the information. We're the validation. Be evidential, personalities, characteristics, no easy, cheesy generals kind of thing. Then it's more solid. And then, getting that open receptivity, people open up to other gifts that you have. Because you're a Reiki healer, do you use that modality in your readings in
Mhm.
any way?
Yeah, I love that. I am a Reiki healer. I have my degree in Reiki, but it came after I was actually healing animals. Isn't that
Yeah.
funny?
That's
I
great.
That
Yeah.
horse really taught me how to use energy out of my hands. That's who really taught me. And going back to that horse, Leo, he was my teacher in many ways. Rosie opened me up to the abilities that I had, but Leo, we used to call him Big Red. He was really well-known dressage horse back in his day. I never rode him. He was just kind of retired and being leased by a lady, and the lady was very open. The owner, I didn't even know. I never met the owner. I would just go up and work on her horse. And I brought up a book with me and I just wrote and wrote and wrote everything he said. And I brought the book in the parking lot and I saw her and I read to her what I wrote. And she like stuck $150 cash in my hands and she was crying and he really wanted to retire. And I told her he doesn't want to work anymore. His back legs are hurting. And she said, "Oh no, Jane said he loves to work. You know, he loves to work. He loves to work." And I was like, he doesn't want to work. And then about a year later, I was told that the vet told them if they don't retire him, he won't have a chance to retire.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to put him down. He went and he lived in this magical place with a mini horse. And I went to visit him several times in this magical place. And he was so happy to see me. And I throw his 5 pounds of carrots in, and the mini horse would have carrots too. And he was such a gentle giant. Usually you don't put a teeny tiny horse in with a big horse, but they were so good together and beautiful.
That's
That's
right. Exactly.
beautiful. So I practice Jinshin Jitsu for animals, and I'm also a canine massage provider. And sometimes when I'm working with animals, they will reveal their soul essence, like basically who they feel they are in this incarnation, but even more than that, just tapped into more of an everlasting feeling. Do you ever get that either through Big Red or, through your own little creatures? Do you ever get those sensations of them revealing themselves to you? It's interesting. Like, so I had an experience where I was working with this little teeny dog
Uh-huh.
and it had a ton of anxiety, a ton of anxiety. So, you got to be patient when you're working with them when they're
Sure.
anxious. It has to be their idea and you have to just let them come to you and you just have to sit there for a long time sometimes. So I was there just being patient and, every time it would come by, I'd like put my hands like, on him and then he'd walk away and come back. So we did this little song and dance for a short while. And then eventually he sat and he just settled in. He like soaked everything up. And then all of a sudden his demeanor completely shifted. He like went from this skittish little nervous, anxious, crazy dog to this like majestic king, like regal, and just like he pumped himself up. And the owner was sitting there and we're both like, what is going on? I mean, the
Was the owner
transformation.
picking up on that as well?
Yeah, the owner saw it too. So we were watching it going, oh, he's just showing
How
us who he really
beautiful.
is. Like
Yeah.
he's just exposing himself to us. And I find, do you ever feel that way sometimes, either with animal communication with, animals that have crossed over, or even the ones here, that they kind of like open up over time to the energy and to the love frequency and to the communication as well? Because there's a ton of communication that happens in energy. Do you ever feel like they open up and they just show you their essence?
Yeah, definitely. There were, early on, I remember one was this dog that came in, and his last incarnation was human. This is kind of rare that the very last incarnation was human, I think. And he was just like a salty, old, flirty dog. And he was just like, I mean, the only thing that I could say is he just felt like one of these fishermen on a big boat and he was the captain and he was just like, "Come here, girl." And my friend who was the realtor at the house, she said, "Oh my god, that is his exact personality. He's in charge. He's like a naughty guy." And it was really interesting.
So we have a lot of listeners that really like to get little tips and tricks of
Sure.
how to begin starting animal communication. Because you mentioned looking at pictures. And do you have anything to offer our listeners of where they could begin just reaching out and touching base with animals on the other side?
Yes, and I do frequently do like intro classes as well. So I would say sign up for my newsletter and just check out when I do animal work. The best thing, if you wanted to do animal communication, do meditation. Do meditation and then have a picture of an animal. So when you're still in that alpha state, you're still in like, that place in between worlds. And that's kind of when the best things happen for me. And I would just open my eyes and look at the picture and just send a lot of love because animals definitely communicate when you send a lot of love. I always think animals are easier to, like babies and animals, they're kind of it's like the same field. They come in
Same
easier.
channel. Yeah.
Yeah, they come in easier. I didn't believe there's an animal communicator in Ohio, and I remember years ago I told her I started animal communicating, and she said, "You've got to do this full time." And I went, "What? Wait, huh? This is like no way." And but she started talking to newborns, and I was like, "What's that about? That's kind of creepy." Like until it happened to me, my client comes on Zoom nursing her baby, and I was like, "What? Wait." And I was like, "Your baby's telling me this, that, and the other thing about your husband and how happy he is, and he's laughing." And it was like, whoa. Until it happens to you, don't be in judgment because weird
Yeah.
stuff happens.
It's only like this till it's like, "Oh." And you know what? There's no way you could know that. Funny but true. You get those oddball validations. Well, don't you find that interesting? Able to communicate from that state of mind about the people connected to in the family? It's like, that's brilliant. And, because we're all interconnected. And when we make some choices of potential alignments for soul growth kind of thing, we'll be brought together with other people in this lifetime. And it's nice that your husband can embrace this because not everyone is on the same page in a relationship.
Yeah, he was terrified in the beginning. He's like, "You can't do this. Are you crazy? You have a career, you have a business. You can't. What do you mean? I don't. You're not taking these classes." Like, and because he's very protective. And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. I can't, but I really love it." And I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And then all of a sudden, I said, "Give me a picture of your dog, his beloved Lola that he had, way before me." And it was his soul dog. And he took her to work. It was this Akita, and she was sick. And it was his everything. I mean, she would open up the door in Panda Express to get in to see him. She knew how to open the door if he was in there getting his lunch. And
Where my food, boy?
exactly. And I opened up the picture of the dog, and as mediums, like not all readings are such vivid clarity. I mean, it's just could be just a very healing message with a name or two, because it's an art form. They're not all let me whack it out of the park. But I open up the picture, and she says, "Can you guys ask him why he took the cheese off my burger at McDonald's?" And he answered like he was talking to her. He goes, "I took the cheese off the burgers at McDonald's because it was too salty." Like he determines that she can have the salt. And he was like, "Oh my God." And then he started to like get behind this and help me with my website more. And it took quite a bit, because you don't have a career in like for 21 years and walk away from it.
Absolutely.
And why at this particular time in your life are you acting on it?
I think I'm more established. I trusted that this is where I needed to put my focus, my time, and my energy into, giving back. Now, that's being said, it is energy work, and I don't do 20 readings a day. I wouldn't be able to function if I did. I do very few, and I take off more. But my readings, like I give thousands to. I give 100% of myself and spirit,
Right.
and
I
I'm
bet
really
it.
present because this is a soul calling. And when you are doing your soul work, as you know, it's the most beautiful thing that you can do. And you feel in one with it. And it's like you're synced up. Like all the lights are on, and there's nothing that could
And
pull
there
you
is
away
someone home.
from
Right.
it. Yeah.
That's the thing I always say, this is not only what I do, it's who I am. I don't know how to be anything different.
Yeah, you
And
were
it's
born
really
that way.
yeah, it's just, and everyone is, but I was honored enough to be able to train with my mom for 20 years,
Oh
sending and
wow.
receiving telepathy, and she was amazing. So it
Wow.
really helped, yeah, it helped prepare me from a very young age when I was activated. Was there an activation in some way of your soul that you felt click like you're on, even as a child?
I was shutting them all down. I mean, when my mother passed away, 6 months after she died, I was sick, and I was, taking Tylenol and going to bed, and all of a sudden I heard her scream in my head, and it was so real. Get to the emergency room. She saved my life. They gave me the last rites in the emergency room. And I still continued to, no, I've got to work and I've got to have a career. And that was like the most important thing. I wasn't connecting the dots because there was still so much anxiety in my body and my soul, and so much more healing I had to do in order to prepare myself to be there and be present for somebody when they're grieving the loss of a pet or having lost their child. There's a certain kind of depth and presence that I had to go through my own losses and go through my own trauma and go through to really be present and really have like that compassion and the love of the person. And you know, I think that's why it took me this long to figure it all out.
Well, I think that's beautiful because most people aren't like Jamie, where they get activated by
Yeah,
Jesus at the age of 5 with spaceships. Most people
how beautiful.
shut down and then have to learn how to reopen through those life experiences that egg them on and encourage
Yeah,
them to reopen. And that gives so much hope to our listeners that they can achieve that level of communication with our loved ones on the other side. They can achieve that if they meditate, like you said, if they become aware of their energy. Yes. And if they open their heart to love and can work with that high vibe frequency, and that honestly, this is one of the messages we give over and over and over again in our podcast for our listeners is meditate, journal, get in touch with your energy, focus. It's all about the love. We say this time and time again. And here you are saying the same thing. And look at where you are today. And hopefully our listeners, I know they're going to eat this up because they love
oh,
animals, but they're going to
oh,
love your story because it's real and more people can relate to where you're at than where Jamie's at. Even though
yeah,
he's an amazing teacher and he's an amazing psychic medium, it's real. It's now like I have someone to relate to. And so
oh, I absolutely enjoyed my time. Beautiful.
I look forward to connecting with you again.
Me too. We're gonna have to stay in touch, you guys.
You got it. Definitely.
absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
If our listeners want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you, Susan?
SusanAllenMedium.com. And I would sign up for my newsletter. I can't wait to do stuff with you guys. It sounds like I
Awesome.
made new friends.
Exactly.
Awesome. If you've been enjoying this Psychic Evolution podcast, please offer us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love to hear your reviews. If you are listening from another podcast platform, you can leave a review on our website, which is psychicevolution.net. Thank you guys for taking this journey with us. And please, please, please keep the most love in your heart for your animals.
Hey guys, I'm Jamie Clark,
And I'm Maggie Clark.
and we're the hosts of the Psychic Evolution podcast. We want to let you know about our first live Psychic Evolution event, an evening under the stars in beautiful Cave Creek, Arizona.
On November 27th, 2021, we are opening up the night with a sound bath for the soul with crystal bowls and intuitive healer Harmony Fonseca from season 3 of the podcast, and also a guided meditation to help heal Mother Earth.
And then we are welcoming spiritual guide Rebecca Cutehands for a live recording of the podcast with a special episode called Healing for the Planet.
Following the live recording, we're going to be offering gallery readings for the audience. So for more information and to register, please visit psychicevolution.net.